Hey everyone. All right, let's dive straight into the conversation about BigBear.ai, because there's a lot happening right now that deserves a deep breakdown. Over the past several weeks, this stock has been slowly but steadily climbing its way back into that mid-$6 range, and the momentum we're seeing is drawing in a ton of attention. People are piling in, and for good reason. What's taking place here isn't your typical slow grind of a recovery stock. It feels very sudden, almost out of the blue, and it's leaving a lot of investors scratching their heads, asking themselves, why now? What's really going on with Big Bear? One of the key catalysts that pushed sentiment higher was the announcement of their deal with the Nashville Airport. That was a big headline, no doubt about it. Anytime a company like BigBear.ai can land a contract with an institution as important as an airport, it adds credibility and paints a picture of real-world application for their technology. That's huge. But here's the thing, while that deal is positive, it's not the only factor at play here. In fact, what has really started to stir up the market is the activity we're seeing from major investment firms. Goldman Sachs, along with a few other big-name players, have been quietly scooping up significant positions in BigBear.ai. And when firms of that caliber start buying large chunks of stock, it forces us to ask the hard questions. Do they know something the rest of us don't? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I personally believe that Wall Street has layers of inside communication that retail investors rarely get access to. Call it whispers, call it connections, call it intelligence gathering, whatever you like, but it exists. Some people call it spying, others call it networking, but the bottom line is that the biggest firms don't make these moves without conviction. It makes me wonder, is there a major deal coming down the pipeline that hasn't been made public yet? Could these firms be front-running some kind of announcement? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is some conspiracy, and I'm not implying illegal insider trading. But let's be real. These firms have teams of analysts, consultants, and industry insiders constantly talking to CEOs, board members, and government contacts. They have more data than we could ever imagine. Look no further than how politicians trade. Nancy Pelosi has been called one of the most successful investors in U.S. history, and it isn't because she's glued to her Robinhood app, it's because connections matter. That same kind of information flow could be in play here with BigBear.ai. And honestly, when I step back and look at Big Bear's current financial picture, it's not like everything is rosy. The quarterly results were painful worse than expected. Cash flow remains a serious issue. The company clearly needs more deals and more revenue to build stability. That's just the reality. The calls were brutal. But here's the thing, sometimes the stock market doesn't just trade on what's happening today, it trades on expectations of what could be announced tomorrow. That's where these big institutional purchases start to look very interesting. If they believe a transformative deal is about to be signed, then they're getting ahead of the curve. And that's exactly the kind of information retail investors never hear until it's official. I follow analysts like Dan Ives and Tom Lee because they're constantly in conversations with company executives and institutional players. They pick up on sentiment shifts before they hit the headlines. For example, Tom Lee recently shared a story about Palantir. He was talking with a company that had partnered with Palantir, and that company described how game-changing the partnership was for them. That type of direct feedback from clients tells you more about a company's potential than a quarterly report ever could. That's why I listen to these people. It's not about hype. It's about having a window into conversations that most of us never get to hear. Now let's circle back to BigBear.ai. Despite its struggles, this is still very much an underdog story. I've been following it closely because I believe one big, meaningful contract could flip the script overnight. I've said this since the start of the year, and I stand by it. It's going to take just one massive deal to change the trajectory of this stock. Think of it like putting a huge piece of meat in front of a starving lion. That's the kind of impact a single contract could have. And that's why I keep asking, why are Goldman Sachs and others buying so aggressively? What do they see? Is there already a deal in the works? Are we just waiting for the official press release? These are the questions I keep circling back to. Looking at the short term, Big Bear is trying to retest that $7 to $8 range. That's the immediate ceiling people are eyeing. With all this momentum, you'd think it's possible. But let's temper our excitement with realism. Whenever we see a strong rally like this, I almost always expect some kind of pullback. Profit-taking is part of the cycle. Wall Street doesn't let gains ride forever. They'll pump a stock, get retail investors excited, and then pull the rug out to lock in their profits. That's why I personally took some gains off the table today. I'd rather redeploy later than watch profits evaporate. The broader market also plays a role. We've got the Fed in the picture again, and rate cut speculation continues to stir volatility. Every time the Fed hints at future policy, the entire market reacts, and stocks like BigBear.ai get caught in that crossfire. So while I'd love to see Big Bear hold between $5.90 and $6.20 over the next session, I won't be shocked if we see a cooler day, maybe even a dip back into the fives. That's just the rhythm of this market. Here's the thing though, momentum is fragile, but it's also powerful. If Big Bear announces even a moderately sized deal, let's say another airport contract, it could easily push the stock back into the $7 to $8 range. That's how hot this setup is right now. The market is itching for an excuse to reward Big Bear, and any piece of positive news could be the spark. This isn't the first time we've seen Big Bear run like this. At the end of 2024, the stock shot up to $10 in a matter of days, only to crash back down when excitement faded. Then came that lawsuit, which hung over the stock like a dark cloud and dragged it down into the $2 range. It felt like it would never end, but eventually it did, and Big Bear started to rebuild momentum through the summer with new partnerships. Just when hope was returning, the quarterly report dropped and knocked the wind out of everything again. That's the roller coaster we're on with this stock. And now, here we are again, a new wave of optimism, a flood of institutional buying, and speculation about what's happening behind the scenes. I refresh the news every 30 minutes waiting to see if a deal drops. I scour their website. I check for press releases. Right now, nothing official has been announced, but the chatter is louder than ever. At the end of the day, this is a waiting game. BigBear.ai has a history of making sharp moves on very little news. It runs on crumbs, and sometimes it runs on fumes. That's why I wouldn't be shocked if it rockets to $8 next week, and I wouldn't be shocked if it falls back to $5 either. That's just who Big Bear is right now, a highly volatile, high-risk, high-reward stock. So where does that leave us? Personally, I'm excited. I've been through the valleys with Big Bear. I've seen the brutal sell-offs, and I've seen the explosive rallies. Right now, I'm glad it's coming back into focus. The momentum is alive again. The institutional money is flowing in, and hope is back on the table. Whether it turns into something big or fizzles out again, we're in for a very interesting ride. So let me know in the comments, do you think BigBear.ai is setting up for a real comeback? Or is this just another short-term pop before another pullback? If you found value in today's breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. This is not financial advice.